Hi, today we are going to be doing Lesson 7, Session 2, and we're going to be continuing our work with the powers of 10. Today we'll look at decimal point patterns and place value charts to see patterns when we multiply and divide by powers of 10. We'll be working on workbook pages 137 through 140 in your Ready Math workbook. So go ahead and take out your Ready Math workbook and turn to page 137. Okay, so today we're going to start out by looking at these two diagrams, and we're going to really be paying attention to the decimal points and how the decimal point shifts as we multiply and divide by a power of 10. The diagrams below show patterns in the placement of the decimal point each time you multiply or divide by a decimal by 10. Complete the missing numbers in each diagram. The decimal point for each missing number is already placed for you. So, to fill out up here, we are going to go ahead and we'll figure out what 5 times 10 is. We know that when you multiply 5 10 times, we get 50. So we start with 50 is what we start with. Okay, so 50 divided by 10 is 5. 5 divided by 10 is 5 tenths. 5 tenths divided by 10 is 5 hundredths. And 5 hundredths divided by 10 is, you guessed it, 5 thousandths. Then, when we multiply 5 thousandths by 10, we get 5 hundredths. When we multiply 5 hundredths by 10, we get 5 tenths. When we multiply 5 tenths by 10, we get 5. And when we multiply 5 times 10, we get 50. So as you can see, the decimal, when you multiply, the decimal shifts over one place value every time. And when you divide, the decimal shifts to the right when you multiply, and it shifts to the left when you divide. So 10 divided by 50 divided by 10, that decimal point shifts over one place to get 5. Then the decimal, when we divide by 10 more, the decimal shifts over 1 to get 5 tenths. When we divide 5 tenths by 10, that decimal point shifts over 1 and we get 5 hundredths. And then when we divide 5 hundredths divided by 10, that decimal point shifts over and we get 5 thousandths. I guess we should put that 0 there. Okay, it'll make a little bit more sense on the next page, but let's keep going. Now we have 2,700. When we divide 2,700 divided by 10, remember this decimal point, we're dividing. So when we divide, it moves to the left. When we multiply, it moves to the right. So if we divide 2,700, if this decimal point shifts over one place, we're going to get 270.0. When we divide by 10 more, this decimal point moves over and we get 27. When we divide by 10, this decimal point moves over and we get 2 7 tenths. And then when this decimal point moves over one place value, because we divided by 10, we get 27 hundredths. Let's just double check that that's right. So now when we're going back up, so when we multiply the decimal shifts, when we multiply the decimal shifts to the right. When we divide, the decimal shifts to the left. Okay, so 27 times 10, or 27 hundredths, excuse me, times 10, the decimal moves over one place and it becomes 2 and 7 tenths. Now, when we multiply 2 and 7 tenths times 10, the decimal shifts over one place to the right and we get 27. When we multiply 27 times 10, the decimal shifts one place to the right and we get 270. When we take 270 and multiply it by 10, this decimal shifts one place to the right and we get 2,700. So now let's look at number 2. Number 2 says use the decimal point pattern diagrams above to help you find each product or quotient. So if we have 5 tenths and we're multiplying it by 100, we can start with our 5 tenths and then we look at how many times, how many multiples of 10 we're going to shift. We know that however many zeros we have, that's how many times our decimal is going to need to move, because this is telling us that we're moving it a multiple of 10 2 times. So this decimal, because there's 2 zeros, is going to shift 2 times. So it shifts over 1, 2. That's our new decimal. And then there's an open space here. What do we put in an open space whenever we need to have something to fill the space that doesn't change, it's like a placeholder. That's right, we use a placeholder 0. So 5 tenths times 100 is equal to 50. Because we started with 5 tenths, we moved our decimal over 2 places, and we got 50. When we multiply 5 tenths times 10 to the second power, we know that that 2 means we're going to move our decimal over 2 places. And remember, because we're multiplying, we're moving our decimal to the right. So we're going to move it over 1, 2, and then put in our placeholder 0. So again, it equals 50. Now, when we divide, we move our decimal to the left. So if we start with 5, and then we have 2 zeros, since we don't have a decimal in the number 5, we know that anytime we don't see a decimal, the decimal always immediately follows the whole number. So this decimal would go right after the 5. And then we're going to shift the decimal point over 2 places because there are 2 zeros. So we're going to shift it over 1 and 2 and put our new decimal. And then we're going to fill this empty space with our placeholder 0. That placeholder 0 is very important. Then your new answer is going to be 0.05. Now, if you want, you can put a 0 in front of that decimal point, but you do not have to. You could just write 0.05 or 0.05. This 0 here does not change the value of the number. Let's try that again using the exponent form. We're going to shift our decimal to the left because we're dividing. We start with 5. We're going to move it over 2 place values because our exponent is 2. Remember that our decimal point is always after the whole. We're going to shift it over 1, 2 places and place our new decimal point and then put in our placeholder 0. And it's going to equal 0.05 or simply 0.05. Now let's look at 27 hundredths. This time, instead of just moving the decimals this way, we're going to look up at this chart. So if we have 27 hundredths and we're multiplying it by 1,000, there are 3 zeros. That's the same as moving, so we're starting here, and then we're going to move up. How many we're multiplying, so how many multiples of 10 are we going to move up? 1, 2, 3 multiples of 10. So we're going to go from here to here is 1, here to here is 1, here to here is 1. So we're going to go all the way up to here because we know that 10 times 10 times 10 is 1,000. 27 hundredths times 1,000 is 270. Now to check our answer, we can also say, okay, if we had 27 hundredths and we moved it over, since we're multiplying, we're going to move it to the right. 1, 2, 3 places. 1, 2, 3. The 0 comes after. Yep, it worked. 270. Now let's do it. Move the decimal to the right because we're multiplying. 27 hundredths times 10 to the third power, 10 to the first power, 10 to the second power, 10 to the third power, 270. Let's try, and then let's check it the other way. 27 hundredths. Move our decimal over 3 places because our exponent is 3. Fill in our placeholder 0, 270. Now, 2,700 divided, which means our decimal is going to move to the left, 2,700 divided by 1,000. So 2,700, 2,700. Remember, our imaginary decimal point is here at the end. We're going to move it over 1, 2, 3 places. 1, 2, 3. Our new answer is 2 7/10. Let's check it using our powers of 10 from up top. Remember, our decimal point is going to move to the left. We're starting with 2,700. We're going to move down 1 power of 10, 2 power of 10, 3 power of 10 because our exponent is 3. 2,700 takes us down to 2 7/10. And that is true. We're moving over 3 places, 2 7/10. Great job, everyone. All right, if you didn't get all of that, you can go ahead and pause it and finish writing that down, and then you can unpause when you're ready to move on. Let's go ahead and go to page 138. On page 138, we're looking at number 3. And so this time, we're going to use place value charts. Before, we were using what are called decimal point patterns. Now we're going to use a place value chart. So we're going to look, and so the first number we have is 5 thousandths. So if we have 5 thousandths and we want to multiply it by 10 to the first power, remember that that is the same as multiplying it 5 thousandths times 10 because we only have one 10. So if we're moving it by 1 power of 10, that means that our 5 is only going to move over 1 place value. Every time you have a power of 10, it moves 1 place value. So this 5 that's starting here, because we have 5 hundredths, 5 thousandths, 5 thousandths times 10 to the first power. This 5 is going to shift over 1 place because we moved over 1 power of 10. Remember, every time you move, that is 1 power of 10. So 5 thousandths times 10 to the, or 10 to the first power equals 5 hundredths. Remember that whatever in the place value chart, wherever that last digit is, that's the number that's the word that corresponds with the number. So this number here is 5 hundredths. Now we're going to take 5 thousandths. So we're still starting with this number here, and we're multiplying it this time times 10 to the second power. That is the same as 5 thousandths times 10 times 10. We're multiplying it by 2 powers of 10. So that means that this 5 is going to move over 2 place values because we're multiplying it by 2 powers of 10. So this 5 is going to shift over 1, 2 places. So our 5 is going to go there. So 5 thousandths times 10 to the second power is equal to 5 tenths. And then 5 thousandths times 10 to the third power is the same as 5 thousandths times 10 times 10 times 10. So this 5 here is going to move over 1, 2, 3 places because it's moving every time we move over, it's multiplying it by a power of 10. And so if we go over 1, 2, 3 places, the 5 is going to be in the ones place. And you can put a 0 there if you want, but you don't have to. So to answer that problem, we're looking at 5 thousandths times 10 to the first power is, 5 thousandths times 10 to the first power is 5 hundredths. 5 thousandths times 10 to the second power is 5 tenths. And 5 thousandths times 10 to the third power is 5 or 5 ones. Let's go to the next problem. The next problem is dividing. And so it's similar. So here, the 5 shifts over one place value every time you multiply by another power of 10. Now here, if the 5 shifted to the left, which way do you think the 5 is going to shift if we're dividing? Let's see if your guess is right. So 5 divided by 10 to the first power. 5 divided by 10, or 5 times 1/10, however you would like to say it, our 5 is going to, whenever we divide by a power of 10, remember we shift our digit one place to the right. So the 5 is going to move over here, and we're shifting one power of 10, so the 5 moves over one place value, one power of 10. Because we're dividing, the 5 is shifting left. Then, it moved one place because we had the exponent of 1. Now we have an exponent of 2. That means that this 5 is going to shift 2 place values. So shift over 1, 2. The 5 is going to be in the hundredths. So 5 divided by 10 to the second power is the same as, the answer is 5 hundredths. And then 5 divided by 10 to the third power, this 5 is going to shift over 1, 2, 3 places, or because we divided by 3 powers of 10. So the 5 is going to shift over here, and then we fill in our placeholder zeros. And so this time, our 5, as you probably guessed, is moving to the right. Here, our 5 moved to the left as our 5 moved to the left. Yeah. As we multiplied by powers of 10. Here, our 5 moves to the right as we multiply by powers of 10. So in the place value chart, the digit that moves is the digit moves. This 5 is what continues to move. The decimal point stays the same. In this example, in the decimal point pattern, the decimal point moves, and the 5 and the 5s also move, but in this one we're really looking at the pattern of the decimal points. So number 5 says, look at the first decimal point pattern diagram and the place value charts. How do the position and the value of the digit 5 change when multiplying and dividing by 10? So I wrote, when you multiply by a power of 10, the decimal point, so we're not talking about this one, we're talking about the other one, the decimal point shifts to the right. When you divide by a power of 10, the decimal point shifts to the left. And that goes along with this as well. When you multiply, the decimal point shifts to the right. When you divide, the decimal point shifts to the left. And then finally, show how to find the product of 19 hundredths times 10 to the third power. Go ahead and pause it and do that now, and then come back and see if you got it right. All right, what I would do is write down your 19 hundredths. Then look at your exponent. It's a 3. So and we know that we're multiplying, so our decimal is going to shift to the right. We're going to shift to the right 3 places. 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to place our new decimal and then put in our placeholder 0. So 19 hundredths times 10 to the third power equals 190. And with that, you're going to go ahead and work on your on pages 139 and 140 on your own. And I will see you at our next session.